Hello again. I'm talking today about how cycling can help alleviate some of the symptoms and effects of poor mental health. What is meant by the title mental health, how cycling physically helps, how it's helped me personally, and how it can help you. And if you haven't got into it, but feel you would like to, how you can get started without it feeling so intimidating. I also have the story from two people where the effect of poor mental health has been extreme in the least. And both have found cycling as their way of just coping with life. Their stories are both heartbreaking with how their lives have been so badly affected, yet in a way also heartwarming that they've found something they love as a solution and coping mechanism. Mental health is a term we hear being used more and more, yet many people still don't really understand exactly what it means. For a start, we all have mental health, but what we really mean in this context is having poor mental health. And that can come in many forms. We generally talk about stress, anxiety and depression, but it can get much more complicated than that. I've made no secret of the fact that when I started cycling, I had some anxiety issues. These were quite low level, to be honest, and my biggest experience these days of mental health issues is dealing with and helping my son, who suffers quite severely. And it pains me that I know how cycling has helped me, yet he is unable to make that jump to embracing something that could well help him. If you're watching this and are lucky enough not to have been affected by any of this, it's very important to realise just what we're talking about. How many times, for instance, do you hear somebody say that they're depressed, when the reality may just be they're fed up with something that's bothering them at the time? Depression often does show as low mood, but can develop to complete and utter helplessness, sometimes to self-harm, and sadly even to suicide. So this is serious stuff. It's not just having a bad day or a bad week. You may well ask, why turn to something like cycling when you can get professional help for this kind of thing? Now that one is a sore subject for me. My son waited 3 years after being diagnosed to get any treatment and got progressively and noticeably worse during that wait. 3 years. As much as politicians and the like will happily say on Mental Health Awareness Week or campaigns that it's good to talk and get it out in the open, the fact is that opening up on this is one thing, and of course that's good that it's no longer a taboo subject. But actual, real, practical, professional help for this kind of thing in the UK is in critically short supply, which makes it even more important to have some way of alleviating the problems a bit by yourself. So what's the proven scientific effect? What's actually going on during physical exercise which might help with mental health problems? I'm not about to turn this into a science blog full of jargon, but in a nutshell, with a little bit of jargon, it's about neurotransmitters and endorphins. Neurotransmitters are key chemicals in our body that we need to function and counteract both physical and mental pain. Depression is caused by a chemical imbalance, resulting in low levels of some of these like serotonin and norepinephrine. And both of those are stimulated by exercise. Endorphins are chemicals also released by glands in your body during exercise, which lead to pain relief and feelings of euphoria. Cycling helps the release of endorphins, which are known as feel-good hormones, which help relaxation and improve your mood. It goes without saying then that any feelings of stress and anxiety are going to be helped by engaging in this type of exercise. So that's the simplified science. I wish that meant that anyone so affected would hear the science and immediately jump on the bike or go for a run. But sadly, it's not that simple. Such are the crippling effects of poor mental health for some people. Doing the seemingly obvious and rational thing can still be fraught with obstacles. The very anxiety that is crying out to be helped is the very thing stopping that person from doing what seems obvious to other people. So if it's about the benefits of exercise, then why not just go to the gym? Well, a gym can often be, in my opinion, an enclosed, noisy and sweaty environment, almost unintentionally competitive at times. Whereas doing your exercise out in the open in the fresh air can leave you more revitalised and positive, whilst taking in the scenery in the sunshine. And any mental health issues are exacerbated by the current cost of living crisis for many people. Once you have a bike, there are no monthly membership fees. Exploring the lanes of our country is completely free. And talking of free, it gives you a sense of freedom, with a breeze in your face that no costly gym membership can provide. Cycling meant that I was lucky enough to not feel too affected by the pandemic lockdowns like many people were, as getting out on my bike was my once-a-day exercise. We all know, for that reason, as many people took up cycling for the first time then. But Tony from Thurrock responded to me on Twitter, and he does a lot to help explain the value of what I'm trying to portray here.
It caught me by surprise. Pretty much broke down towards the end of the first lockdown, as I hadn't been out cycling at all. Walking the dog was my one-a-day exercise. Went out for a ride about a week before lockdown was lifted, and instantly felt a weight being lifted off me.
So what was it about cycling that probably helped Tony and certainly helped me? Cycling encourages social interaction, which for some people is something they badly need to be able to feel better. It's a large part of my enjoyment of cycling, riding with my local club, or meeting up with pals I don't see very often for a day out on the bikes. For others though, that's the exact opposite of what they need. And cycling helps with that too, giving the opportunity for solitude in a beautiful, calm environment. If peace and quiet is what you need. I have times when I need both. Bike rides to favourite cafe stops with the club mean my head isn't full of anything other than the chat and banter that this brings with like-minded people. There are other times when I just need calm, and cycling out in our glorious countryside delivers exactly that. And every now and again you suddenly come across a beautiful little spot like this on the side of the road. So peaceful. We've all had times when we need to calm ourselves down with a big well, cycling in places like that is like one big, huge, comforting and calming deep breath sigh. Now it's looking very much like it's going to rain any minute now, so let's take this back into the house over a cup of tea. Meditation is often used as a way of relieving some damaging effects of mental health problems, and cycling is very much a meditative activity. The whole process of riding a bike is rhythmical, turning those pedals, watching the miles or minutes tick by, and the level of concentration required to be aware of what's going on around you is enough to help you focus on just that and nothing else. Equally, I find cycling useful to actually make myself more aware of what's going on in my head and use that time to deliberate and make sense of whatever it is that's got me wound up. This is really only on a solo ride along quiet lanes where there isn't a lot else going on other than little old me riding my bike in the peaceful countryside. Just stop for a moment on this bike ride. It's been fairly fast paced for nearly 50 miles. And sometimes you just forget when your head's down. It's just complete silence. A couple of birds twittering. Absolutely gorgeous. It's why we cycle. One of the reasons anyway. It's not unusual for me to leave the house being bothered by something and just mull it over during the ride as I rhythmically turn those pedals, working out the whys and wherefores, and the calming meditative environment gets me back home with a better perspective and ready to move on without that bothersome issue being the obstacle it was when I set off. So let me tell you about Matt in Liverpool, who very openly refers to himself as a suicide survivor. When I asked how cycling had helped him with his battle with mental health, he told me this: the days I feel I don't want to ride, the days I felt like killing myself, the days I felt like hurting myself, the days I don't like myself, those are the days I need to ride my bike. One of my self-prescribed meds was cycling when I was released from a psychiatric ward. I'd been a cyclist for a few years and knew how much it helped. The time to process thoughts and look back at behaviours aren't always active thoughts. They just get untangled on a bike ride. It's hard to describe, but everything is better after a ride. Everything seems to have run its own thought process, helping in many aspects of life after a ride. The solitude or the social aspect of one is immensely underrated and undervalued. It's quite sobering to think how Matt's life would be right now without his bike. And it's brilliant that he uses his cycling these days to raise funds for a local project helping adults with their mental health issues. The other person who reached out to me was Anouk from Utrecht in the Netherlands. And, well, I'll let her words speak for themselves, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. She says, cycling is therapy. I go through life with CPTSD, that's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which for me involves a lot of anxiety, depression, and derealization. Especially anxiety has had a firm grip on me for as long as I can remember. The last 10 years have been years of growing to the point where I am okay. Key words in that are accept and adapt. Accepting I will always get triggered and overwhelmed easily gave me some sense of freedom. But true freedom comes on two wheels. My head is always full, except on the bike. Riding long distances, especially in hilly areas, clears my mind. When I rode from the Netherlands to Mount Ventoux last year, I noticed halfway through, my head wasn't full. I felt completely free from my own mind. Demons, whatever one would call it. True freedom I can't find anywhere else. It has become my lifeline. Whenever I get overwhelmed too much, I feel like I'm spiraling down. I take my bike and go on a solo trip. I would not be able to remain a somewhat normal functioning human if I didn't have that. My bike is my therapist, truly. I even left my job to become a bike courier. I'm now delivering medical supplies on my own beloved bike, and it has made such a difference for me. Office life takes too much out of me. I chose less income, but more happiness. Even a bad day at work now is still a day on the bike. Cycling is massively important for me. Such an amazing story. To think that Anouk's condition was so debilitating and a realization that her cycling was so therapeutic that she made such a brave but admirable decision to change her lifestyle by moving to a lower paid job, which allowed her to use her bike every day. I chose less income but more happiness is a quote that not only reflects what Anouk needed to do in order to keep her health in check, it's also perhaps a life lesson to us all. I found both stories very moving and powerful, and both of these two inspirational people gave their blessing to use them here. Hopefully, you can see that the crutch that cycling can provide for people suffering from mental health issues is of enormous help to people who might have what I call low-level issues like mine. It's a tool to keep a complete breakdown at bay, like for Tony in my first example, and nothing short of miraculous for my two friends in these last two examples, who suffered the anguish and trauma of serious mental illness. Wherever you are on that scale, I absolutely urge you to give it a try. You may already be cycling and hadn't realized that in doing so, you're helping keep something at bay that might otherwise be more troubling for you. Tony's example is a huge indication of that. He didn't realize how much it helped until he stopped doing it during a very stressful time. Like I said earlier, it's not a case of get on a bike and everything will be all right. I have an example every day with my son that the very condition that regular exercise can actually help and alleviate can paradoxically be the very thing which creates the obstacle stopping that self-help from happening. All I can say is that if anxiety about the size of the task ahead is an issue for you, it's imperative to realize that cycling takes many forms, and taking things slowly whilst dipping a toe in the water will be advantageous for you and do the trick. So don't be looking at videos of what I get up to these days, for example, and be overwhelmed and increase your stress levels by feeling like you've failed before you've started. If you are unfit anyway, then just a short ride will give you the level of exercise that starts the physical process and kickstarts the release of endorphins and neurotransmitters that will give you some relief. As time goes on, you'll get fitter and enjoy the meditative contemplation of longer rides and the process of seeing and feeling the progress and improvement, and give you a sense of satisfaction and heighten your self-esteem, which is really therapeutic. Many of us will be suffering some kind of mental health issue, both diagnosed and undiagnosed. And let me be clear, nothing I'm saying here should be in place of any medication or treatment prescribed for you. But I'm pretty sure no healthcare professional would argue against you taking up cycling alongside any current treatment. It's obviously easier if you already have a bike you can dust down and get started on, but you don't need an expensive new bike to get going. Another obstacle is just not having the time to take up what is essentially a new hobby or pastime, and I get that. In the last 50 years, the mechanization and technological advances, along with the increase in the relentless pace of life, has meant there just seems to be fewer opportunities to fit in physical activity into our busy lives. Cycling can slot in and be incorporated into daily life. There are thousands of people who don't cycle for sport or leisure that are classed as utility cyclists, using it as a form of transportation and bagging the mental and physical health benefits whilst going about their normal day-to-day routine. I truly hope this has given some perspective as to the scale of the problems many people are struggling with, often in silence, and how getting on a bike can play some part in alleviating symptoms of mental illness. If you're a sufferer, I hope I've given you something to consider and just a touch of hope maybe. If you're already a cyclist, I hope I've given you a reason to never fall out of love with cycling. If you're a motorist who doesn't cycle, then please avoid getting sucked in to the crazy anti-cyclist mentality that's out there. That person on the bike in front of you is exactly that, a person. And if being held up by them is making you stressed and angry, maybe you should consider the calming effects of riding a bike in your spare time. A huge thank you to Tony, Matt and Anouk for your wonderful openness and honesty. Remember, mental illness is invisible, so please be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. Happy cycling, and I'll see you soon.